So we're live here again. Okay, we are live.
Okay. Lana and I are just
Yeah.
juggling equipment here.
So, hi everyone. I'm Lana Shaheen from Palestine, Gaza, and I'm here to interview Skip today about the Red Book. So, Skip will start talking about the Red Book and give us some information about everything.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to take this opportunity to explain the Red Book to Lana. And since Lana's a journalism student, I thought I would give her an opportunity to interview me. So are you seeing me okay and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything's good.
All right. So this is the Red Book by C.G. Jung. Okay, and what the Red Book represents is a time during Dr. Jung's life when he was having a very traumatic experience. He had, he was, he was 38 years old, and so he was just about to enter into his midlife crisis, and it was a very scary time in Europe. He was living in Zurich, Switzerland, and it was just before the beginning of World War I. And at that time, he, after 6 years of working with Sigmund Freud, he had broken up with Freud, and his biggest reason was that Freud only wanted to talk about materialism and rationalism, and Dr. Jung felt that there was much more to the psyche than that, and that there actually was a religious function within the psyche. And so Dr. Jung was very depressed, and so he decided to examine his own psyche. He was an accomplished psychiatrist at this point, and so what he did over a 5-year period was he simply did a kind of meditation which is called active imagination, where he examined his own psyche. And when he was doing that, he would sort of enter into a meditation, but it was not a meditation like a Buddhist meditation where you let things go away. Instead, when something comes up during an active imagination, you actually interact with it. So if something happens, if something moves, you pay attention to it. If something presents itself, and just don't bother with that right now. And if it moves, you follow it, and if there's action going on, you enter into the action. And so the Red Book is based on his psychiatrist's notebooks that he kept during this period. And then he came back, and so the Red Book was a kind of scrapbook. Just hit the reconnect. Hopefully this will be all right. Okay. I think we're back. It just said reconnect, so okay. All right. So after he had taken down the black books, he had a bookmaker in Germany create a beautiful, beautiful scrapbook for him. And last week in our session, we showed an example of new Red Books being made for people that want them. But what this is a facsimile copy of his original Red Book, and these are available for sale on Amazon. And so in the beginning of this, you can take a right way up. Okay. So the years of which I have spoken to you when I pursued the inner images were the most important time of my life. Everything else is to be derived from this, It began at that time, and the later details hardly matter anymore. My entire life consisted in elaborating what had burst forth from the unconscious and flooded me like an enigmatic stream and threatened to break me. That was the stuff of material for more than only one life. Everything later was merely the outer classification, the scientific elaboration, and the integration into life. But the numinous beginning, which contained everything, was then. Signed C.G. Jung in 1957, 4 years before he died. Now, so what he did was he created like a medieval manuscript. And so this is the first page of the Red Book. And so this is a painting that he painted, which actually is an expression of everything that he taught, believe it or not, is contained in this painting. And he's referring to all species, and he's referring to astrology and the stars here. He's referring to what's going on in the unconscious and the idea of a snake being both a good snake and a bad snake, and the idea of psychic energy in the fire here. And so he was quite an accomplished calligrapher. So after he had his story that he had written out in his black book, and so he actually wrote this. So like here you see this is like a medieval manuscript where the first letter of a word is in a painting. And so then you see der, which is the, and I don't read German, so we'll go to the meaning later, but he wrote it all in German calligraphy. And so there are 191 pages that he wrote out in beautiful calligraphy with many different paintings. So here you have a dove with a D, and here here you have an S, which is the beginning of the word seals, which means soul, and Gott, soul, the soul's God, is what he's saying here. But you see the S, and you see a snake here, and this is like the Garden of Eden with a bird up above, which represents the spirit. And so there are many different paintings that he did for the beginning of each of these sections of the Red Book. Now, what I want to emphasize here is this one. While he was in one of his active imaginations, he met Elijah and Salome. And so this is a painting he did of that encounter. And so you see Elijah and Salome here, and the fellow in white, in the white thobe, is Jung himself, and he's being taught by Elijah and Salome. And so Elijah represents the wise old man, and Salome represents the anima, or the female figure in a man's unconscious. And so that was Liber Primus that we just went through. And this is Liber Secundus, which is the second book. And so here you can see two snakes, like in the caduceus, which is in the symbol of medicine, where you have a good snake and a bad snake, and they are coming up, but sometimes the bad snake can bring medicine with it. And so you see an eye, and you ought to know about eyes in paintings, right? And you can see a growing flower here. So again, these are all at the beginning of his calligraphy. Now, let's skip ahead here. So here, there's another bigger one. but the big pictures are in the back here, so I'm going to skip ahead through the German calligraphy. Okay, so this is, what is his name? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this guy's name, but he is an ancient god. And you see in this picture, he's a giant. And so people in ancient times were seeing their gods as giants. And so here you see little Jung here praying to this giant. And all around him are crocodiles, okay? The dangers of life, chaos of life. And he's got snakes all around him. And here Jung is praying that he not be killed by this god because he's in his deep unconscious and he's interacting with, his name is Izdubar. Okay, so Izdubar is this giant, and there's quite a raucous exchange between Jung and Izdubar where Izdubar says that how can you believe in science because science is poison and it's going to do away with me because science is rationalism. So a god can't live on the rational side of the brain. It has to live on the irrational side of the brain, the eros side of the brain, which is where we all live, actually. But Izdubar is worried that he can't continue to live because Jung has brought science into him, and Jung decides that first of all, Izdubar is an ancient guy, so he can't hurt Jung because Jung lives in the 20th century, so he imagines that, and then he imagines shrinking Izdubar down to size and putting him in his pocket. Literally. Okay. So there are a lot of very strange concepts here. But okay, so here's another where a big concept in Jungian psychology is the idea of the mandala, which is a circle, and it represents all of the universe. So here there's a reference to the Vedas, which is in Hinduism, but here this man is imagining this mandala, which represents all of the universe. And okay, so then I've done some descriptions of these recently, but these are like oriental rugs. So Jung is imagining things that are coming from the Orient. So again, you see a snake here, you see a bird. These are all archetypal figures. And this fellow has a crown. Here you see a mandala with some temples and so on. So these are all symbolic images that he himself painted. So for example, you can see he was seeing these very scary creatures in his unconscious, and this scary creature here, and there's a snake here, and there's an egg here, and the god Izdubar has been shrunk down and put into this egg in his imagination. Okay, and so again, more symbols of the tree of life. And then here what you see is the emergence of this fiery flow of psychic energy that's coming out of Dr. Jung's psyche, and he's feeling this psychic energy, so he's expressing this. So this is kind of the kind of expression that you get when you're doing your abstract work. Okay, except he was a little bit more detailed than that. And so here you see again a snake, two snakes, I guess, intertwined, and this is a kind of mandala also. And here conjoined mandalas, which represent more than one person. And here again, here's a mandala surrounding mandalas, right? Remember the other night when we were looking at arrival and the way the beings were communicating, which was with the circular way of communicating. And so these are all mandalas that Dr. Jung did, and you can see in this one, here's the universe, but there's something else pushing up from his unconscious. So this is thing that's abstractly pushing up. Um, and there's some particularly good ones here. I don't want to flip by them, but here's the egg, which is symbolic of the birth of a new God, of God. And here is symbolizing, good and bad, good and evil, right and wrong, spirituality. This is the physical world we live in, and this is the spiritual world, and this is the earthy, the natural instinct world. Okay, here's a very interesting mandala. Here he has Salome again, and the wise old man, and another female figure. This is a good female figure, and I don't know who that is. I don't recall, but you can see how detailed his mandala is here. Now this is a great one that he did, I think. It's just beautiful. And again, what he's expressing from his unconscious is that this represents the universe, and he's going to put the universe into this circle. And here he is being pierced by God. In other words, a numinous event is happening that makes it so that he has religious experience, so he can know God. And so he's got the earthy world, the snake down here, but here's God piercing his heart. And so when he's asked, do you believe in God? He says, I have no need to believe, I know. And this is why he knows. And we have a lot of snakes here. This is Phanes, who's a Greek god. And this is Dr. Jung when he's feeling very depressed. So this is an image of him depressed and just can't get control of his world. And so you can see how that is. And then you can see Atom Victu, which is another kind of god that's chaos trying to eat you alive. And here's somebody trying to hold him off. That's something like Jordan Peterson. And then we have a savior who's cutting up the dragon. The dragon is trying, or then Saint I forget. Anyway, there was a savior who had a sword, and he cut up the dragon. So here you can see all the pieces of the dragon cut off, and the guy with the sword cutting up the dragon. And then here is another mandala that represents the center of the universe and the whole universe in that mandala. And this is a negative god that he envisioned. And then here we have this little guy who's living up in the spirit world, and he's offering the water, let's say, of truth down to the physical world. And so here are individuals who are flowering. These individuals here are flowering, and you can see this temple of God there. And this is a great one here. So this is the city of Geneva, and here is someone who's meditating, and he's imagining the universe in the form of this mandala, but he's also imagining the psychic energy which is coming off this mandala. Did that die again? I think it's
We're
okay
back,
now.
yeah.
Okay. Almost done, but here's some other mandalas showing different environments and different situations. And then this is a very interesting painting because in this one, let's see, I think we shouldn't be changing the orientation. It should either be one way or the other. Okay, so this is very interesting because here we have a mandala. Here you have a city in the dark. And so this is the idea of God protecting this city. And this man here is praying toward this God. But there's also the dragon of chaos that's all around. And so this is an amazing dragon he painted. And then here again is a mandala represented in the stars and the moon. And this is another beautiful painting. In the sexual world. And it also goes up into the heavens, into the spiritual part. And so this egg represents all the universe again, but it's also capturing all the aspects. So we have to have roots down into our instinctual self, our physical self, but then our tree grows up into our spiritual self. That's basically what that's talking about. Let's see what else we got here. And again, here's some larger letters, the letter W and the letter O beginning a section. Okay, this is Philemon. So later on in his active imagination, this fellow appeared, and he had wings like a kingfisher. And you can see a snake again here and a temple. And so Philemon was this wisdom part of himself that came and talked with him. And so Dr. Jung could talk with him, and their conversation went on for a very long time. And Philemon actually dictated the 7 Sermons of the Dead, among other things. And here is, in this image, is an anima figure, and she has gold and light shining down on her, and all these people around her who are either against her or for her. It's but amazing pictures, right? And then in 1927, a man named Richard Wilhelm came and brought him The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is a Taoist text. And it happened that just at that time he was painting this image, which has a Chinese feel to it. And so he came to believe that the connection of Wilhelm coming and the fact that he painted this image was a synchronicity that was teaching him something from spiritually. And then this is an amazing picture of all the people, many people that he knows, and you can see a personality in every one of these images. I think that may be the last image in the red book. So anyway, then in the red book, the published red book in English, is the introduction, which talks all about Dr. Jung's early life and about this period that he was going through, and explains it all. And then in the back is the translation of the red book itself. And so he talks about how he had to give up his rationality in order to understand the spiritual parts of the psyche. That's what he was talking about. And so just so happens that I have stuck in here, so I'll show you. This is this is a mock-up of the cover of one of the books I wrote, which is called Seduction for the Soul, and it's a book of poetry. And I wrote it under a pen name, my pen name, David Garrison. And here is, I have 2 copies of it. I did a painting. I was doing paintings that I was putting in the bathroom at a local restaurant downtown. And so I did a painting, something like that. That's my painting there. And my painting got stolen. And so the newspaper wrote an article about my painting being stolen. That's what that's about.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what questions do you have? That's from a journalistic point of view now.
So thank you so much, Skip, for all this. Like, it's amazing. So I want you to tell me more about the Mandala because I don't have that much information about it.
Okay.
So
the mandala is an image that has appeared in every civilization in the world. And unfortunately, I don't have them right here, but I will show you later. And my followers on the oldest mandala that has been found now is 50,000 years old, 50,000, and it was found in Australia. And so I have previously shown and will show again. I'll print it out so that this evening for the session I will have a printout of that. But there's a printout of a Australian Aboriginal man in a cave, and this is a huge cave. It's maybe 100 meters across, and the whole ceiling of this cave is a mandala. And then the interesting thing is, the most interesting thing to me was that divers in the Sea of Japan were finding mandalas on the seafloor that were just lying there in the sand. And for years, this was in the early 1990s, they started to find these things on the seafloor. And they went down and they carefully watched, and what they discovered was that this mandala was being created by this little 5-inch long fish called the fugu fish or the puffer fish. And this is the fish that you never want to eat in Japanese sushi unless your sushi chef really knows his business, because it's a poisonous fish and it has a sac in it that's poisonous. So, but this 5-inch long fish, it takes 5 days, 5 days, and it creates a mandala that is about 2 meters in diameter. And it's just beautiful, and it just carves it into the sand. And then the female fish comes along and lays her eggs right in the middle of that mandala. So this is an image that is not only in human beings, but it goes so far back. In order for that image to appear in a fish in the Sea of Japan is just phenomenal that it is. And it's just a perfect mandala. And so from Dr. Jung's perspective, and he didn't know about the Australian example, so he knew about people in Zimbabwe in about 35,000 years ago who had also created mandalas. And it's a it's a pictorial image of all of creation. Okay, basically is what it is. And let's see, I think when Dr. Jung was trying to understand himself, in the back here there's an appendix, and during World War One, he was on the he was called to duty as the commandant of a prisoner of war camp in Switzerland of German prisoners, and he was so each day, to keep his mind contained, he was drawing a mandala that represented his state of being at that time. And so you can see examples of the mandalas that he did over time. And you saw the many. And then in 1927, this image came to him in a dream, and this is called the Liverpool dream. So he dreamed he was in the city of Liverpool with some other Swiss, and it was very dark, and it was rainy, and there were these streets that radiated out from a center lake, and in the center of the lake was an island, and there was a Swiss who was living in Liverpool, and the other people in the dream didn't know why this Swiss man wanted to live in Liverpool. But then they came upon this island, and on this island was a beautiful magnolia tree, and sunshine onto this beautiful magnolia tree that was pink and so on. And so then Jung could understand why someone would want to live in that place, because of this beautiful center of the city. And for him, that represented the center of his soul, the center of his self. So his dream was presenting to him a psychic center, the self, and the magnolia tree represented that. And some say that uh, mandala is an image of God, and um, so, and this is a more complicated mandala that he did at one time. I'm not going to go into it in great detail now, but as you can see, it's quite an amazing piece of art, and so you wouldn't think that a psychiatrist would be into art like this, but Dr. Jung felt that you had to have some creative outlet, whatever it was. It could be anything. It could be sculpture, painting, and in his lifetime, it's not shown here because it happened later, but in his lifetime, he built an entire house with his bare hands, and he did stone masonry where he was carving stones, and he did obviously a lot of writing, 20 volumes worth, and so he did many creative things in his lifetime to keep himself connected with his own unconscious. And this is the product of it. I mean, this is the product of only 5 years of it, actually. It took him 16 years to put it together. But he had been having this experience in 1913 where he had broken up with Dr. Freud. He had another problem in his life, and he didn't know, he was having these terrible dreams. He was having terrible nightmares and visions, and had a vision of a flood covering all of Europe, and then he had a vision of a flood of blood, and he saw bodies floating past, and boots and various things in these dreams. And he had 5 visions and dreams between October 12th, 1913 and August 1st, 1914. And what he was tuning into was the collective unconscious, which he later recognized. And so he said that when the war broke out, when World War One broke out, he was the happiest man in the world because then he knew that these visions were not him being crazy, but him having this collective experience that all of Europe was about to have, and so that allowed him to say a lot in his then 45 years of writing after that. But anyway, that's the Red Book, and thank you for giving me
Yeah,
an
thank you
opportunity.
so much, Skip, for this information. And
So, did you have some other questions?
um, actually, for now, no, I don't have many questions.
Okay.
But thank you so much for giving us this time to know more about the Red Book and what Jung just did in his life. And I don't know if you want to check the questions or something like this now.
Oh, let's see if
Okay,
I can
I
get.
can open this for you.
I need to get you to unlock that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look and see if there are chats. Unfortunately, when we're live casting off the cell phone, we can't necessarily see the chat. Ah, here we go. Okay, so now I can see myself looking at this. So let me look at the chats. Okay, so Ron Fun says he was going through the process of ego death because of the stage of life he was in and how he lost his reputation and role in life through being dismissed as a mystic. That's correct. And people are still trying to dismiss Dr. Jung as a mystic, but in a sense, he is a mystic, but he's a mystic about what's in everybody's deep unconscious. And Brandy's A Beacon of Light says, yes, I agree, Ron Fon. Those of a Buddhistic persuasion would dismiss his active imaginations as entirely redundant, but it's certainly beneficial for preceding generations that he did them and left behind the results, yes. And yes, Buddhists actually, Lana and I just came from a Buddhist meditation class in which we did a meditation, but Buddhist meditation would have you dismiss anything that comes up in your psyche. But Dr. Jung was looking at the contents of the psyche and trying to understand it. And Ron Fun says, wealth of information. Joshua Boardman says, out of curiosity, how much did that copy of the Red Book cost? It looks beautiful. This copy of the Red Book costs about $150. There is a reader's edition that does not include all of the calligraphy, and it doesn't include the paintings and so on. That's about $25. And you can find many of these images on Google by just putting in Carl Jung Red Book images, and they'll all pop up. And Brandy says order, and Carlos says love the setting. Thank you, Carlos. I hope we're still connected. Are we still connected?
Yeah, we're still connected.
Okay, so we still have 8 people according to this, and Joshua says that's my birthday sorted this year. Yeah, yeah, I have to get some more birthday gifts mounted up because I have a few more things that I want. But anyway, so for all of you, please don't hesitate to join our weekly live broadcast, which tonight will be from the Sammy's Italian Pizza Kitchen. And Lana is a mystery guest for that session, and Lana will be telling her story and how she comes to be a house guest of mine for the next month. And so that will begin tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And so I hope to see you then. And we're going to log off at this point. So Lana, can you hit the stop, or can you find it there?
Where is it?
Okay, let me find it.
Okay.
All right. So I think if we just hit this X, oh, wait a minute. Carlos said something. I have oh, wait a minute. Okay, what did Carlos say?
Oh,
Um,
you can check it.
yeah, it didn't come up here yet. Okay. Carlos, I'm sorry. Your comment came up and it hasn't come through to my other iPhone, and so I can't respond to it. But thank you for your comment.
Okay, so I'm gonna end it.